the real reason why Soul For Real lost their success. We want to write songs and we want to get publishing rights so that we can make the money that everyone else is making, which is not wrong. There's nothing wrong with that vision. There was nothing wrong with that dream. They were on the right track. But the failure came in being able to follow the blueprint. Welcome to another episode of Becoming with Angelina Watkins, and I'm your host, Angelina, your queen of becoming, and I'm here to help sophisticated professionals and first-time entrepreneurs become who they need to be so that they can do what they're purposed to do, so they can live the abundant life that they want to live. And I started this podcast so we can have conversations all the way from healing to prosperity and everything in between that you need to know in order to become and evolve so that you can win at love, life, and money. Now, if this is your first time tuning in, I welcome you to the show. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss another episode. Because when I tell you, you won't be sorry for listening in, you won't be sorry for listening in. Always leave a comment. Let me know how you enjoyed the show. Let me know what your thoughts were. I love to talk to you, so leave some comments below. Now, in today's episode, I want to get into talking about Soul For Real. Unsung has an episode about Soul For Real, and I watched it, and there's so much to learn from their story of being low, going high, and leaving and going back low. And in that, what I wanted to share with you on talk about today is that you can't skip the process. Okay? Now, the easiest thing to do is the hardest thing to do, and that is the change. And what happened with Soul For Real is that we didn't go through the transition of change. And so I want to talk about the real reason why Soul For Real lost their success. Because it's not really what everyone thinks. That, we got upset with each other and, they tried to come in between the brothers, and the industry does what they always do to folks that come in that are new in the industry. It's about change, you all. It's about not going through the process. So you have Soul For Real. This is a group of brothers, 4 brothers that lived in New York. They're originally from Trinidad, and their parents moved to America, so they were living in New York, and they could sing. And so they started this group, and they were discovered eventually by Heavy D. And so Heavy D signs a record deal with them. He is really believing in what he can do with these group of brothers. So they come out with their first record, Candy Rain. And y'all, it came out in 1995. And let me tell you, it's still a hit to today. That song is classic, okay? But that song took off, and it took them to stardom really, really quick. Like, we went from nothing to super, super famous in milliseconds, okay?
Becoming superstars overnight, ready or not.
I was the king of the world.
And so they came out with Candy Rain, doing very well. Then they came out with a second song. I think it's Every Little Thing You Do, You're On My Mind. That was a hit too. It's still a classic. They're doing well. They're traveling, they're touring. But when in the process of becoming famous, and I say becoming famous, they took these boys and they changed their look. They cut off the braids, gave them little afros, they changed their clothes and their persona of how they look. But what happened was, we didn't change the inside.
I have braids, I got sagging jeans, and all of the street gear till an afro, cut off, a shape up, tight clothes, new shoes. The people went absolutely bonkers.
because we were dealing with some teenagers. I think the youngest Jason was maybe like 14. You had a brother that was 16, 18, 19. Like they were teenagers. And so we changed the outside appearance, but we didn't work on the inside. And because we didn't work on the inside, and as they were growing, they weren't learning and maturing and who they are and learning about the industry, they got a little too big for their britches. Okay? And so now we're doing very, very well. And we're about to do this second album within a year of the first album coming out, which is really quick. I mean, we come out with the first album in like March of 1995, and we're already coming out with a new album in September of 1996. But the first album does so well, and they're getting money, but they're not getting big money. And they want big money.
Headed back to the studio to record their next album. They wanted to write more songs and get the money for the publishing that came with it.
They wanted more creative control. They wanted more input. They wanted to produce more records, and they wanted to write more records. We had mad expenses. So that $20,000, it didn't stretch that long. How do we get the real money? How do I get my mansion and my Benzes?
And so they want to know, how can we get publishing rights? We want to write songs and we want to get publishing rights so that we can make the money that everyone else is making, which is not wrong. There's nothing wrong with that vision. There was nothing wrong with that dream. They were on the right track. But the failure came in being able to follow the blueprint. They got a little bit too big for their britches, and they got a little too big for where they are. They saw the vision, but we didn't want to go through the process to get to the vision. And see, that's how some of us are sometimes. We have a vision, we have somewhere we want to go, we have somewhere we want to be, we have a destiny, we see it, we can feel it, we can taste it, we can almost touch it. But we don't want to go through the process of what it requires to get there. We don't want to go through the process of becoming who we need to be. We don't want to go through the process of preparing and developing ourselves and evolving in our being. Yes, you got gifts and you got talent, but there's other things besides your gifts and talents that you have to learn. There's some skills and abilities that you have to acquire to assist you in your purpose, to assist you with your gifts and talents and however you're to serve the people. And so they got a little ahead of themselves. And so they wanted publishing rights, and they go and they sign this publishing deal, and they come back and they want to, they say, well, you can do 40%, we'll give you a 40% of the publishing on your album, but it didn't work out that way. They got 85% through making the album, and most of the songs have been written by other people. So by the time the second album is finished, only 5 of the songs were written by them, and they got credits, but no publishing. And that kind of upset them. Okay, it kind of upset them. And so what they were not listening to was they kept trying to tell them to follow the process. There's a process in the music industry that they need to follow. There's a process that you have to go through where you're not making very much, but if you can stand the long haul, and if you can get through the peaks and the valleys, but those peaks and valleys don't take you all the way down. They continue to take you up. You can make money.
I felt that they weren't ready at the time, so let's not get too big for our britches here. Let's do the formula that we have, and let's get another one out the park. And on the next album, you guys are free to do what you want. But, of course, it didn't. The friction just continued.
I saw an interview from Kiki Wyatt. I love Kiki Wyatt. But she says that Randy Jackson told her that you have to have the fame and then the money will come. And she's like, the fame and then the money will come? What do you mean? Why? I want the money now. I'm working now. I'm singing now. Why can't I have the money now? Why I got to wait for the fame to get the money? And she didn't like that. She didn't like what he said. She didn't like that answer. And then she had to realize later on, years later, that now that she got the fame, she's got the money. And she finally understood what he was trying to say. You got to put in the work. And there's some steps that you got to take in creating What we say in business is a brand. When you're in the music industry, you're creating a brand, you're creating a persona and a brand of who you are and what you can deliver. And if you're consistent and if people want to work with you, and that brand, if you build the right brand, will bring you money. She talked about how here it is years later, songs that she sung years ago is now feeding her family. Soul For Real didn't give themselves the opportunity to go through that process of getting the fame that is stable and consistent so that they can have the money.
My life plummeted. It's horrible to have a house that you say, oh, Mom, I bought you this house. And the next minute, you getting kicked out of the house and you sold for real?
They wanted the money before they fully got the fame. They got a taste of the fame, but we hadn't fully branded ourselves. 1 year of ladies screaming and throwing panties on the stage at you is not branding in the music industry. You're hot today, but not hot tomorrow. And they kept trying to tell them that just wait till after your second album and then you can do more, because there was a blueprint. There's a process. These A&R people know, and these talent development people know what it takes to get you out there.
They had a wake-up call on how difficult it is to actually sustain success. They had to face reality.
I thought I was always gonna be on top, but I was in for a rude awakening.
The sound, the look, the interviews, and the songs and the music and everything has to be cohesive and working together. And then it takes time. We have to make sure that this is not a one-hit wonder. Like, we have to make sure that the people like you today and tomorrow and 5 years from now, because then when you have the fame, the money will come. But what happened is we never developed into who we were supposed to be. These were some young men thrown into grown men industry, doing grown men things, but not maturing internally to understand that some things take time. It takes time, and everything is not to be rushed. And when you skip steps, then it takes you back. And they tried to skip steps, and it took them back to a point that it was hard for them to recover.
I don't got no money? What? Now they don't love us no more? What you mean? What you talking about? Now I gotta go get a job?
And so I say to you, don't skip the process of becoming who you need to be. You need to go through the process of developing yourself emotionally, mentally, spiritually, developing yourself in your relationship with money. Their relationship with money was not good. They were driven by money and greed because they came from nothing. They had talked about their mom gambling, and sometimes it got to the point where they didn't have electricity for 3 months. And we are thrown from not having anything to getting something. And if our mind hasn't matured, then we'll become a little greedy, hoarders. We want it all. I want to get it. I want to get it. I want to get it. And that was kind of the mentality. Well, how can I get this money? How can I get what you're getting? Well, you can get it, but you got to go through the process. And see, sometimes our success supersedes our where we are mentally and emotionally to handle the success. And if we don't catch up mentally and emotionally to handle the success that we get, then we're going to lose it. It's like a person who wins the lottery, who never learned about how money works and how to manage their money. And they get all this money from the lottery, and then a year later, they're broke. Why? Because the internally had not caught up to what happened externally. The change didn't happen internally to match what happened externally. And that's what really happened with Soul For Real. Their mental and emotional and their spiritual being had not matured fast enough to catch up with the external success that they were receiving to the point that they weren't thinking correctly, they weren't listening, they thought they knew it all, they kept trying to tell them, and what they did was they started burning bridges and messing up relationships. And that's what we do. That's what we do when we don't heal and become and transform and evolve in our being. We start messing up relationships, and we start messing over people, and we start burning bridges, and then we're left by ourselves until we mature and realize all the things that we did wrong and how we messed up and how we lost good people in our lives because we just didn't listen, and we didn't mature, and we didn't develop ourselves. So for real lost because their internal being had not yet matured fast enough to catch up with the external success. And they try to skip the process. And you can't skip the process. Not if you want to be successful. All right? Where you are is not where you have to be. Your past does not define you. You define you. So heal, transform, and pursue.